are two candidates in this election, Nigel Farage, who is currently an MEP for the UK Independence Party, and Labour's Caroline Flint, a minister in the last Parliament. Welcome to you both. I suppose the first thing one notices is it's not election on the front page.
No, I mean, doesn't this reflect the fact that we're a week into the campaign and actually the great British public are getting bored already?
Well, I have to tell you one thing. As one of those people who may be guilty of boring the great British public, I have to say we always get this in the first of the 4 weeks of the campaign. People always say they're bored in the election, and then things heat up.
I think that's right. I mean, and there is obviously, you know, we're in the first week. You know, people are settling into the campaign. People are getting their leaflets and everything sorted out, but I think, you know, I think it is hotting up, and I think it's going to be an interesting election. And I think we've got the first leaders' debate this week, I think, and I think that will be interesting to see how that sparks off more interest.
That's right. That's on Thursday. Lots of newspapers looking forward to that. You're a bit of a debater yourself, Nigel Farage.
Well, yeah, not invited onto this one, of course.
Yeah, well, you're not in that one, but what's your tip for the top then? Booming voice, is that the answer?
Well, it does help sometimes, particularly when everyone's shouting at you. It makes quite a big difference. But can I just come back to this? We've had the first week of the campaign. The big debate has been about whether £6 billion goes on or doesn't go on employers' national insurance next year, when the government next year is going to spend £700 billion. I mean, this is pathetic, puny, irrelevant stuff, and I think the fact that newspapers are not covering the election big time reflects that.
Is that what you've been concentrating on the doorstep?
Well, I think on the doorstep, the sort of things that come up is people feeling that, you know, we're not out of the woods yet in terms of the recovery, and that's why I think this national insurance debate, although it has dominated the debate of last week, is in danger of missing the point that actually we have got a fragile recovery at the moment, and we need to do everything we can, and tax is one way, but cutting some of the cost of public services another, but also is making sure we get the growth.
Let's look at the papers then. And first of all, the Sunday Times, you picked out that, Karen, Conservatives to let firms run state schools at a profit.
Well, I think, again, one of the things about election campaigns, it does really hone people's attention on dividing lines between the parties. And I think this is an interesting story because, you know, I'm not against businesses being involved in schools, sponsorship. I have academies in my own area. But I think this takes it onto a completely different tack, which is to run schools at a profit. And I think, you know, parents, you know, looking at this may be worried about what this might mean. Will they suddenly have to pay for after-school clubs? Who will that benefit?
Well, I think it's clear that it's clear state schools. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think PFIs, the private business building hospitals, building schools, have a profit factored in, don't they?
But I think there's a difference between that, where we were trying to get buildings replaced, to actually running the day-to-day running of a school on a profit basis. And I think that is worrying. And I think for many parents, you know, having a state education is about what they pay in as taxpayers, and the idea that maybe down the road we'll have a Tory vision of education, which is you get so much free, but the other bits, the add-ons, you have to pay for, and that would leave a lot of families out and in the lurch.
But if you don't like it, you picked up the Express saying voting is the best
form
of protest.
Yeah, I mean, Neil Hamilton saying what millions of people feel, that they've lost faith with politics.
He says that as someone who was voted out himself.
Yes, he was. That may have clouded his judgment. No, I don't think so. Look, there are millions of people who don't intend to vote, and whatever we say about this campaign, the intention to vote at this stage is about 10% down on where it was in 2005. And what Hamilton is saying is, if you feel angry about the fact that you can't trust your politicians, about the expenses scandal, please don't just sit at home, go out and vote for somebody, and he recommends...
That's as someone who was voted out on an expenses issue, so...
well, he makes a point on it, but what he's saying is, here is...
Well, you agree with him on this occasion, don't you?
What he's saying here is that actually Parliament, this election is becoming less and less relevant because most of our laws are made by Brussels anyway. But don't say...
Here we go, Nigel.
Well, 75%, I mean, it's quite a lot, really, isn't it?
Well, I'll dispute that.
I think would agree. It's disputed. Now, having already been on the education battlefield, you've got...
housing.
Well, you've also got to the NHS.
Yes.
Yeah, the Observer, Labour saved the NHS since 1997. Now, this is a King's Fund report saying that things have got better in the NHS, but it has to be said at a tax price.
Well, yes, I mean, you know, we have had to raise investment into the NHS, but, you know, I think when you can show that that's made a difference, it's justified. And I remember back in '97, you know, people waiting 2 or more years for just eye cataract operations. Now people are getting, you know, treatment that they need earlier than ever before. We've improved the stock of the buildings we've got, and some of that is involved using PFI, and that's good. The other part of it is the job isn't over, though. We need to do more, better, and even more efficiently. And the other side of that, obviously, as a former public health minister, is what we do to prevent the sort of conditions down the road through bad diet, alcohol and everything
Do you think
else.
it's a trump card, the health service for Labour?
Yes and no. I think it is better. There are lots of new shiny hospitals everywhere. But I'm afraid the massive increase in spending, and when you see just how much of that has gone on increases in admin staff, the question is, are we getting value for money? And I don't think people
But
really
more
think
people are getting treatment earlier
I don't
and
doubt
saving
that,
lives.
but at what cost? And that's the question.
Final on elections, you've picked out Cameron, I will be a one-nation Tory Prime Minister.
Yeah, reinforcing the point. And after that, there's an interview with him. It's one of the blandest
Would he say
things,
anything else?
It's one of the blandest things I've ever read in my life. It's a policy-free zone, and it confirms for me my
You're not
suspicion.
a one-nation man yourself. you
If-
like a bit of division.
If you actually... Well, I like to have debate on real policies, and what we've got here, I think, is a general election campaign where we're voting for a change, not of government, but of management.
All right, let's move on. A lot of comment on Nigel, this plane crash yesterday, which killed the Polish Prime Minister,
President. And it killed the head of the central bank, and it killed all the chiefs of staff, and it killed members of the lower house, members of the upper house. I mean, wow, this is a really massive and shocking event. And of course, the bitter irony that they were going to Russia for the first time ever to try and reconcile differences over this murder back in 1940 of up to 20,000 Polish army officers.
Russian plane going at Russian invitation for the first time. Some people might say a bit suspicious.
Well, I'm sure there'll be comment, but I think that's why we need to find out what exactly happened here. But I think, again, clearly the Russian authorities and Putin and others have said, they need to sort out what happened. I understand that, as the plane was coming down, the air traffic control at the Russian end was warning the plane. So who knows what's happened? It's a huge tragedy. And given that, part of the purpose of the visit was actually to deal with something that clearly emotionally is felt today very strongly about something that happened in the past.
Because you're sort of politician.
Yes, he was. He'd lived under Russian rule for many years, and what he didn't want was for an independent Poland to be bullied around by Brussels. So, yes, I rather admired him, actually.
Well, I think we'll be thinking about other things today in Poland, to be honest.
OK, we must leave it there. Thank you both very much indeed. This is Sky News, and on our website, skynews.com, you can keep up with all the latest political gossip at the Bolton & Co blog. And coming up, Lib-Labour Pacts, David Blunt.